If your doctor told you to stop drinking fluids after dinner and you're still waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. to use the bathroom, your doctor gave you half the answer. There are 5 specific drinks that address what the cut your fluids advice completely misses. And at least one of them is probably the opposite of what you'd expect. Stopping water before bed isn't wrong exactly. It's just incomplete in a way that keeps most people stuck. The problem isn't simply that fluid goes in and comes out. It's what's happening inside an aging hormonal system that's now producing urine on a completely different schedule than it did 10 years ago. Cut the water and you haven't touched any of that. And for a lot of people, stopping fluids at 6 p.m. is actually making the nighttime problem worse, not better. Concentrated, dehydrated urine irritates the bladder lining, which means you're waking up more urgently, with less volume, more often. You followed the advice, you're more miserable than before, and you have no idea why. That's what this video fixes, not just what to stop drinking, what to start drinking, and when. Most of what you've been told about this focuses on the wrong end of the pipe. Your kidneys don't just passively filter fluid around the clock, they operate on a schedule. During the day, a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, ADH, tells your kidneys to concentrate urine and hold water. At night, ADH levels are supposed to rise sharply, which slows urine production and lets you sleep for 6 to 8 hours without a problem. Past about 60, that nighttime ADH surge weakens. The signal gets smaller. Your kidneys don't get the instruction to slow down, so they keep producing urine at nearly the same rate overnight as they do during the day. Doctors call this nocturnal polyuria, making too much urine at night. And in older adults, it's extraordinarily common. Some estimates put it above 75% of people over 65. Once you understand that, you understand why cutting fluids after dinner doesn't solve the problem. The issue isn't that you're drinking too much in the evening, it's that your kidneys are producing too much urine overnight regardless, because the hormonal brake that used to slow them down has worn thin. There's also the bladder side of this. As the bladder ages, its capacity shrinks. The walls lose elasticity, so they can't stretch and hold as much, and the nerve signals that say time to go become more sensitive, firing earlier at lower volumes with less warning than they used to give you. So even a moderate amount of urine triggers an urgent response that 20 years ago would have been easy to sleep through. And then the sleep architecture problem compounds both of those. Older adults spend far less time in deep sleep than younger people, and light sleep is fragile. Any physical signal, including a bladder that's 2/3 full rather than completely full, is enough to pull you awake. Younger people sleep through it, older adults don't, not because they're weaker, because the sleep itself is lighter. 3 systems, all running against you at once. Cutting water at 6 p.m. scratches at the surface of the first one and doesn't touch the other 2. A National Sleep Foundation survey of more than 1,400 older adults found that waking to use the bathroom was reported as the cause of sleep disruption every single night by 53% of respondents, more than half, and it was more than 4 times more common than the next most frequently cited cause, which was pain. A separate study of more than 4,000 adults over 65 found that 89% of men and 86% of women who reported waking during the night cited the need to urinate as the reason. Not stress, not noise, not an overactive mind, the bathroom. And most of those people were managing it the same way, restricting fluids, waking up anyway, and assuming this was just aging. It isn't just aging, it's a specific, addressable set of biological changes that respond to specific interventions, which is exactly what we're going to get into. Drink number 1, chamomile tea. Not because it's relaxing in some vague, general sense, because of what's specifically happening in your brain when you drink it. Chamomile contains a compound called apigenin, a flavonoid that binds directly to receptors in the brain. The same family of receptors, actually, that pharmaceutical sleep medications target. Chamomile gets there at a much gentler level, without the dependency risk, without the morning grogginess, without the cognitive side effects that make sleep medication such a problem for people over 60. But the mechanism is real and specific. Apigenin is quieting the nervous system in a documented, measurable way. A clinical trial out of Iran, 60 elderly adults, 28 consecutive days, found that chamomile extract significantly improved sleep quality scores compared to placebo on the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, the standard tool researchers use to measure sleep. The chamomile group slept better, measurably, not marginally. Now, why does this matter for the bathroom problem specifically? The connection most people miss is this. One of the biggest drivers of nighttime urgency in older adults isn't how much urine is in the bladder, it's how activated the nervous system is. An anxious, alert, cortisol-primed nervous system fires urgency signals at lower bladder volumes than a calm one. You've experienced this, the way stress makes you feel like you need to go even when you just went. That same dynamic runs at a low hum for a lot of older adults at night. The nervous system is alert when it should be winding down, and the bladder responds accordingly. Chamomile addresses that directly. A small cup, about 6 ounces, not a full mug, roughly 45 minutes before bed. Small enough that the fluid volume itself isn't a problem. Targeted enough that the apigenin has time to reach the brain before you're trying to sleep. One practical note, steep it longer than you think. 5 to 10 minutes covered, so the volatile compounds don't evaporate. Most people steep chamomile for 2 minutes and wonder why it doesn't do much. The active compound needs time to fully infuse. Drink number 2, warm milk, or a plant-based alternative with the right profile. Warm milk has been around as a sleep remedy forever, and it keeps getting dismissed as folk medicine. That dismissal is wrong. Milk contains tryptophan. The amino acid your brain converts first into serotonin, then into melatonin. The same melatonin your aging pineal gland is producing less and less of with each passing decade. Warm milk isn't giving you a dose of melatonin directly. It's handing your brain the raw ingredient to make its own. The warmth matters too, and not just for comfort. When you drink something warm, it briefly raises your peripheral body temperature. Your body responds by pushing heat outward, which drops your core temperature. And a dropping core temperature is one of the primary triggers for sleep onset. You're using the warmth of the drink to start that process deliberately. The practical version, 6 to 8 ounces of warm milk, or unsweetened almond milk, which contains both tryptophan and magnesium, with a small drizzle of honey. The honey serves a specific purpose. A small amount of carbohydrate helps tryptophan cross into the brain more efficiently. Without it, tryptophan competes with other amino acids in the bloodstream, and much of it never arrives in usable amounts. 6 ounces, small volume. The point isn't hydration. The point is what's dissolved in it. If dairy doesn't work for you, unsweetened almond milk is the better swap over oat or soy. The magnesium content is particularly relevant here. And drink 5 gets specifically into why magnesium matters for the bladder problem, not just sleep. Drink number 3, valerian root tea. Valerian is the most studied herbal sleep remedy in the world, and also the most misunderstood because people expect it to work like a sleeping pill. Take it once and knock out. That's not what it does. What valerian does is increase the availability of GABA in the brain. GABA is the neurotransmitter that tells your nervous system to stand down. The same signal chamomile touches through apigenin, but through a different pathway. Valerian works more on GABA production and release. Chamomile works on the receptor side. They're complementary, not redundant, and some people do better combining them in a single evening blend than using either alone. Researchers looked at 16 placebo-controlled trials of valerian covering more than 1,000 patients and published the analysis in the American Journal of Medicine. The result? People taking valerian were 1.8 times more likely to report improved sleep quality than people taking placebo. That's not a massive effect, but it's real and consistent across studies with different populations and designs. For something with no dependency risk and no morning impairment, which is a serious concern with most pharmaceutical options for older adults, that profile is genuinely useful. The thing worth knowing about valerian is that it's cumulative. Most people feel almost nothing the first night. By the end of the first week, something has shifted. By 2 weeks, it's working as intended. This is the opposite of how most people approach sleep aids. They want it to work tonight or they move on. Valerian needs time to build. Give it 2 weeks before you decide. Practical note, valerian has a strong, earthy smell some people find off-putting. If that's you, look for blends that combine it with lemon balm or passion flower. Both have their own mild, calming properties and make the tea considerably more pleasant. Same 6-ounce rule applies. Small volume, 45 minutes before bed, and give it time. Drink number 4, tart cherry juice, but not when you think. The instinct is to put everything helpful right before bed. With tart cherry juice, that's actually the wrong move if you're dealing with nighttime bathroom trips. Tart cherries contain meaningful amounts of melatonin, not a precursor, actual melatonin, along with anti-inflammatory compounds that work on the low-grade bladder inflammation that makes urgency signals fire earlier than they should. But it's also a liquid. 8 ounces of anything before bed adds to the fluid load that an aging bladder and a weakening ADH system have to manage overnight. The right protocol for this situation: drink tart cherry juice in the morning and again at about 4 or 5 p.m. Not the evening, not before bed. The melatonin enters your bloodstream and builds a gradual foundation through the day. By the time your body's own melatonin production starts ramping up in the evening, the production that's already weakened with age, the cherry juice has been supporting it for hours. Your melatonin isn't just coming from one depleted source, it's coming from 2, and you didn't add a single ounce of fluid to your pre-sleep window. The anti-inflammatory effect matters too. Tart cherry contains deep red pigment compounds called anthocyanins that reduce low-grade inflammation throughout the body, including in the bladder wall, where chronic irritation is an underappreciated driver of urgency frequency in older adults. Not an overnight fix. But consistently, over weeks, they shift the baseline. 8 ounces, morning and mid-afternoon. Unsweetened Montmorency tart cherry, if you can find it. That's the variety with the highest melatonin content. Check the label. Most products marketed as cherry juice are sweet cherry blends with added sugar. It should taste sour. That's how you know it's the right one. Drink number 5. Warm magnesium water. Not a tea, not a juice. The simplest thing on this list, and for a lot of people, the one that moves the needle most directly on the bathroom problem itself. Magnesium is a mineral that relaxes smooth muscle, and your bladder wall is smooth muscle. When magnesium levels are low, which is extremely common in adults over 60, both because the aging gut absorbs it less efficiently and because diuretics and other common medications actively deplete it, the bladder wall stays in a slightly contracted, hyperreactive state. It fires urgency signals earlier, at lower volumes, with more intensity than the situation actually warrants. Replenishing magnesium in the evening addresses that directly. The muscle relaxes, the urgency threshold rises, the bladder can hold more before the signal becomes irresistible. A double-blind clinical trial in elderly insomnia patients found that magnesium supplementation significantly improved sleep efficiency, lowered cortisol, and raised the body's own melatonin production, all in one intervention. You're getting the sleep chemistry benefits alongside a direct effect on the organ that's been waking you up. Here's how to do it. A teaspoon of magnesium glycinate or magnesium citrate powder dissolved in 4 to 6 ounces of warm water about an hour before bed. Magnesium glycinate is gentler on the digestive system than magnesium oxide, which is the form in most cheap supplements and the one most likely to cause loose stools. Start with half a teaspoon if you're new to it, and the warm water isn't just a delivery vehicle. It's doing the core temperature work we covered with the warm milk, 4 to 6 ounces, not a full glass. The goal is the magnesium, not the water. Before we close, I want you to sit with something, because this isn't just about sleeping better. Nocturia is associated with a 1.8-fold increased risk of hip fracture in older adults. A quarter of all falls in people over 65 happen at night. Of those, about 25% are directly connected to getting up to use the bathroom. Think about what that actually looks like. It's 2:30 in the morning, the room is dark, you're not fully awake because you were in light sleep when the signal hit and your brain hasn't caught up yet. You're moving fast because the urgency is real. You're barefoot on a cold floor. Maybe there's a rug edge that catches your foot. Maybe there's a step you misjudged in the dark. That is the moment where lives change. Not with drama or a warning. Just a half second of bad footing in a dark hallway, and everything that comes after is different. The surgery, the recovery, the months of depending on other people for things you've done on your own for decades. And for some people, that independence doesn't fully come back. That's not inevitable. That's what I want you to take from this video. The biology driving these nighttime trips is real, but it responds to real interventions. The drinks we've covered aren't a trick, they're targeted. Chamomile and valerian calm the nervous system that's been keeping the bladder on high alert. Tart cherry and warm milk replenish the melatonin supply that age has been quietly depleting. And magnesium works directly on the bladder wall itself, different mechanisms, different angles, building on each other over time. You don't have to accept this as the cost of getting older. It isn't. Pick 2, not 5, 2. If urgency is your main problem, the right now feeling jolting you out of sleep, start with chamomile and magnesium water. Those address the nervous system and bladder muscle tone most directly. If falling back asleep after the bathroom trip is the bigger issue, the lying awake at 3 a.m. that's more exhausting than the trip itself, start with warm milk or almond milk and valerian. That's the sleep chemistry angle. Either way, move the tart cherry juice into your morning this week. No decision required, no evening disruption. Just swap it in at breakfast and again mid-afternoon. 3 weeks. Consistent, same protocol. The improvements come quietly, fewer trips, or falling back asleep faster after the one that happens. When you notice it, it'll be worth it. Subscribe if you want more. There's a lot more to cover on this, and none of it involves telling you to just drink less water.